Hello, Dodger faithful. It is game day for NLDS Game 1 between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Diego Padres. The rosters just dropped, so let's take a peek at them as we go into Game 1. For as far as the Dodgers roster goes, a bit of a surprise. Mr. Gavin Lux is on the roster, and coming off of the roster is Edwin Rios in kind of a surprise move. I personally thought that they would have dropped Beatty over Edwin, just because I believe Edwin right now has the hotter bat. He's had some success against the Padres as well. But there's a move there. Keibert Ruiz is not on the roster. They're going with two catchers this go around. They went with Austin Barnes and Will Smith. Honestly, not an overall surprise there, as Dylan Floro has made the roster. Again, not a surprise, carrying 14 pitchers in what could be a super long 5 straight day series in the NLDS. And, to round out the roster, again, you have Mookie, Jock, AJ, Cody, Kike, Chris Taylor on that roster. You also have Terrence Gore, who's on the roster. The speedster Terrence. Again, kind of a surprise that he's on there. They didn't really use him during the regular season. He's been in the taxi squad all season, and they definitely could have used him to their advantage in any of those extra inning games. But they're looking at the matchups. They're trying to get an edge where they can, as far as statistics go, and here we are with Terrence on the roster. As far as pitchers go, we have Pedro, Butane, Flora, like I mentioned, Goose, Victor Gonzalez, Bruce Dark Gratterall, Kenley Jansen, Joe Kelly, Clayton Kershaw, Adam Kolarek, Dustin May, Jake McGee, Blake Trinan, and Julio Urias. So I mean, overall, I feel like it's a pretty balanced roster. In the taxi squad, you have a few guys that they definitely are keeping a bunch of pitchers on that taxi squad. But that's in part because you want to have that edge in case something does happen down in the bubble to any of those guys. We'll get into that here in a second, especially with Walker Buehler, in that game one matchup. But all in all, a pretty balanced roster. I'm expecting a huge, kind of a welcoming party, for lack of a better term, for Brustar Gratterall starting this series, in part because of how Doc Roberts mentioned that they were open, for lack of a better term, to not using Kenley Jansen exclusively in the ninth inning. So I'm expecting Brustar to start closing. All along, it's kind of been implied that to a certain degree that's kind of what a certain way they were going. If you remember in the wild card series, they got him up in the eighth and ninth. I'm sorry, to warm him up. Just in case. Just as that CYA. So it's again overall a pretty balanced out roster. The big surprise though is Gavin Lux being added onto this roster. His postseason stats. They're not anything crazy, but then we also have to remember, this is his second postseason, so he's not going to have these out of the world stats considering all the hype around him. But in 9 at bats, he's got 2 hits, 1 home run, 1 RBI, obviously, and he's hitting 222. So it's one of those things where a lot of people are concerned about his offense and that he wasn't hitting great in this season, this 2020 season. Granted, he didn't come up right away with the Dodgers, if you recall right. In 63 at bats, he had 11 hits, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, and was hitting 175. So, you know, not a great sample size at 63 at bats, but this is they want to give the kid some reps. They kept saying that his glove wasn't where they wanted it to be. Defensively, he wasn't where they wanted him to be. So it looks like he's going to get some on-the-job training if he gets into a game. If he does, I suspect that they're going to use him in pinch hitting situations. I don't automatically assume they're going to start him right away, just because the depth that they have at that position with Kike, with even Chris Taylor, that they have better defensive options that they could use at the second base hole. So it's going to be a very interesting series, going into this, because the Padres, who have decided take their sweet time with their roster. Uh, obviously, there had been talk for the last couple of days that they were going to go with Mike Clevenger on the roster, and so that came to fruition. Clev is on the roster. The other starting pitchers that they have are Zach Davies, Chris Paddock, and in a surprise move as far as getting someone added on there is Ryan Weathers, who we'll talk about him here in a second. But to round out the rest of the roster, as you guys know, Tatis, Machado, Mitch Moreland, Cronenworth, and Hosmer all there. No surprises there. Will Myers, Tommy Pham, Jurickson Profar, all there in the outfield. And for the most part, they went with the same bullpen, same starting rotation. Just the huge caveat here is them adding Ryan Weathers, who we'll talk about here in a second. But he's not played above A ball, and he's a great prospect in their system. Obviously, the Padres and the Dodgers both have great systems, and in minor league systems that is. And so no surprise that they want to bring up some depth, some younger depth up to the show. But it's just kind of a little bit of a surprise that they're doing it in the NLDS. And don't be surprised if Weathers were to start Game 4, if there is a Game 4, because again, this series there that has the potential of going 5 straight games in a row, which I also still think that would benefit the Dodgers just because of their depth. But as we kind of kind of break down a little bit more as far as everything with what we have going, the Game 1 starter for the Dodgers is Walker Buehler, the 26-year-old going into this. From his first start, he had a great start. Obviously, there's the blister issue, and again, that's one of the reasons why I feel like the Dodgers decided to go with the 14 pitchers over the 3 catchers, just because they want to have that advantage where they can have it if they do have some issues with Walker's finger. Because blisters, obviously with him throwing that curveball, could be problematic going into the series. He was throwing the curveball, and it looked great as he was out there for Game 1 in the wild card series. He's had a little bit of rest. From everything that's kind of been implied, it sounds like he's either going to be on an inning count or a pitch count. So I'm expecting him to go about 75 pitches, give or take, and going from there into the depth that is the Dodgers bullpen. But for this year, excuse me, going into this year though, he has a little bit of a higher ERA just because of what happened in that Game 1. But so I kind of look past that just because the stuff is there. But overall, he has 8 strikeouts. He's got a WHIP of 1.25. And like I said, that little bit of an elevated ERA that, in my opinion, you kind of look past it just because of the circumstances of Game 1 with the 4.50 ERA. But all in all, we know what he has. Him being a younger guy, obviously, they're not necessarily worried about the stamina. It's just the finger. At this point, that's just ultimately what it is that blister. But great matchup going into this because Mike Clevenger, Sunshine is when he's on that he's one of the the top starters in all of baseball, not just for the Padres, but all of baseball. Going into this, for his postseason stats, he actually has a similar line to Walker Buehler. He has a 4.50 ERA in 7 games and 12 innings pitched, 15 strikeouts with a 1.67 WHIP. So, it's a pretty even keel matchup as far as stuff goes as well. Clev obviously is going to be a little bit of a shall we say a caveat, just because in the last couple of days he's thrown 3 sessions, like side sessions that were on flat ground, and then 1 bullpen, and coming out of them each pain free, which is good, for a pitcher. But as far as stuff goes, we don't know where his stuff's going to be. Obviously they were going for how he felt. And, I've said that privately to some people. They're looking to see how he felt after each of those sessions. And, he's had positive days and they're moving on. Obviously they don't have Danielson Lamet. So that's kind of a bummer for them. Obviously for the Dodgers, that's beneficial because from there, like I said, they're probably going to go Paddock in Game 2, Davies in Game 3. And then, obviously from there, they'll probably end up doing either Weathers or a bullpen game. As far as the Dodgers go, I fully expect the rotation to be Walker, Clayton, Gonsolin. Um, barring anything crazy happening in game one with Walker, and if everything goes as planned, that's kind of how I'm expecting that rotation to go for them. And then obviously with that Dodgers bullpen, who I'm on record saying this is the best bullpen that they've had in all these years that they've been winning these division titles. It's going to be a deep bullpen that it's not going to be easy to get through. So it's all in all balanced lineups for both teams as far as offense goes. Pitching, I give the advantage to the Dodgers over the Padres just because with Clevenger, you might get a few innings, but the thing is their bullpen. They've already gone deep into the bullpen. Coming from the wild card series, and the Cardinals kind of push them to the limit. This team in comparison to the Cardinals, the Dodgers, that is, they're not the same team. They're not built the same. You have a murderer's row of lineups that they could throw at the Padres. So it's going to be an interesting series as far as the chess component goes. But I give the advantage to the Dodgers though, also just because of how hyper focused they are in just in every aspect of it. They're kind of looking at it like, okay, step one, this is step two, and they got to go out and get 3 down in the bubble there in Arlington. Looking in game 2, the start that's going to be under the microscope is going to be Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw, who again kind of unfairly is getting that, in my opinion, unfairly getting all the flack for not winning the big one, and I get it. Now in this era, it's about championships. In the eyes of many, the best pitcher of this generation, the best left-handed pitcher potentially ever. In the postseason, his stats are not anywhere near what they are in the regular season. But again, I think a lot of it is you go out and you throw a clunker or two, and it happens that way, right? So with those postseason stats, this go around, his current ERA is 0, and in the one game he pitched 8 innings, had 13 strikeouts, and has a 0.50 WHIP. So it looks like Kershaw on his A game, but his overall postseason starts are 10 wins, 11 losses, 4.22 ERA, and in 166 innings, it's got 183 strikeouts with a 1.08 WHIP. So I mean, again, you go out and you throw a clunker or two, it's going to elevate that ERA, and it's going to give that perception of like, oh, he's not on his A game, et cetera, et cetera. I do think that he's going to drop the hammer again, just because he's a man on a mission, and you can definitely tell that he's a man on a mission just because after that game 2 start, he definitely didn't show a whole lot of emotion because he knows what the task at hand is, which is we need to get to the World Series, and we need to get the thing done. Just for comparison, I was looking around at a bunch of stuff just to compare, Clayton Kershaw, who in some people's eyes is again the best left-handed pitcher of ever and the best pitcher of this generation. But when you look at big game pitchers, the likes of Randy Johnson, of the Kurt Schillings of the world, stuff like that. Who's the guy that you can kind of compare him to? I didn't want to go Randy Johnson because that's not a fair comparison, because that's a dude that went out and had that magical run with the D-backs, and they did what they did, right? So I looked at a couple other lefties, and one of them that came to mind was Al Leiter. Al Leiter, who is in some eyes considered a big game pitcher, obviously went in that ring with the Marlins, taking those teams from the Mets from the late 90s and early 2000s, to the playoffs, the NLCS, the World Series. He's regarded as a big game pitcher. In those 11 series over a combined total of 5 years, from Toronto to the Mets, because he also took Toronto to the playoffs. His ERA is 4.63, and he has a WHIP of 1.433. So, and he himself has gone out and he's had some clunkers, in I believe the NLDS, for the Marlins, he went out and gave a big old bomb, in that series, and it threw his ERA up to 9. In Toronto, he also, threw a clunker of an inning. I think it was a home run that he gave up, and in 7 innings ended up getting, a 7.7, basically an 8 ERA. So it's going to happen. It's bound to happen because it's a microcosm of the game. But I think Kershaw this go around though, this Kershaw that we have right now might be the best Kershaw that we've had in the postseason. In part just because of the stuff there, the rest. He's healthy. Obviously the shortened season, helps a little bit of everyone, just because you're a little more fresh and more on your game. But I think if there's any time to be like, okay, Clayton's on, it's now. You know, it's it's one of those where at the end of the day, if Kershaw goes out and does what he did in game two again, then hey, as far as I'm concerned, you can't ask any more questions because he's doing his part. Because the other caveat to this team is the acquisitions that the Dodgers have made in the last couple of years to get to this point, and the biggest one obviously being Mookie Betts. With Mookie being here right now, this is what's going to get this team, in my opinion, over the hump, and we'll be good to go. So it's going to be a super interesting series. Obviously we're only going to go over game one and game two in the sense that we only know those are the only Dodger starters that we officially know, just because they've been open about it, right? The other note that I wanted to throw out: Angel Hernandez, who is suing MLB baseball, the org itself, will be umpiring in the series, and he'll be at first base today, and then I believe he's at the plate tomorrow. So just kind of an interesting tidbit to throw in there. Obviously, everyone has fantastic things to say about Angel Hernandez as an umpire, so that'll be an interesting thing to kind of keep an eye on. I believe the last time that he was a postseason umpire, before kind of this whole lawsuit thing came about, he had two challenges in the New York series, or rather two calls and then two challenges, and they came about. So, again, it's going to be an interesting series. It's going to be fascinating to watch tonight as far as that goes, because you have kind of two pitchers. I wouldn't say necessarily on the mend. Walker Buehler has his issues with the blister. Clev was having his issues, getting to this point. So I'm super curious to see how it all pans out. But I do expect ultimately the Dodgers to pull it out tonight, and then same with tomorrow, regardless of who goes for the Padres. Excuse me. I expect them both to get that win. And then in game three, I can definitely see game three kind of going, one way or the other, just depending on who the Padres decide to go with. If they go with a Paddock and Gonsolin matchup, again, I give the advantage to the Dodgers just because Gonsolin has been on fire. The only thing that I'd be concerned with, Tony, is the amount of time off between now and his last start. That's the only big concern that I would have. But all in all, these guys definitely know how to throw on that game face, and now we're here. So it's going to be a super interesting series. Looking forward to it. Super excited that we're actually having playoff baseball in this pandemic. As you look around at the other series that are going on, it's a big day in baseball today, just because you got the Braves and the Marlins starting their series out in Houston as well. Everything going on at our stadium, the rich irony of the Houston Astros playing in our stadium right now. But all in all, it's going to be a fantastic series. Thank you for tuning in to this preview show. We will catch you in the post-game show right after the game tonight. We'll tweet about it. You can catch it all at Dodgers Beat. And again, if you have any questions, for that post-game show, if you're pissed about whatever happens, if you're upset about Gavin getting into the game, if he does, throw a comment at the Dodgers Beat Twitter. It's at Dodgers Beat. You could also tweet me directly, as you can see the handle down there at the Bean818. Anything you want to talk about, you have questions at the end of the game, come on, let's talk about it. But in the meantime, stay safe, and we'll talk to you after the game tonight.